I was floored when I was reading the planning guides for Australia. You look at a map and you see this island continent,
Uh,
and then it hits you that that single landmass is roughly the size of the continental United States.
yeah.
It just immediately makes a 2-week vacation feel almost impossible.
It creates such a unique logistical headache. I mean,
Mhm.
this is not a country where you can just hop on a fast train to the next city.
Not at all.
The distances we're talking about are measured in thousands of kilometers.
Yeah.
So our mission today is really to analyze that ultimate trade-off.
Right.
We've got sources detailing a high-speed, sort of icon-focused 2-week sprint, and then this sprawling, much more relaxed 4-week deep dive.
Okay, so we're figuring out the cost of speed versus the payoff of depth.
Exactly. What do you have to cut and what can you really achieve?
Okay, let's unpack this then. The sources really force you to make a critical choice right from the get-go.
They do.
Do you stay concentrated on the East Coast, where most of the people are, or do you try to fly cross-country to hit those icons in the center and the west?
And for anyone attempting that short 14-day trip, flying is, well, it's not negotiable. There's just no other way.
You have to.
You'd eat up almost half your vacation just driving between, say, Sydney and Cairns. So the real question becomes, how do you use those precious flights?
And the sources give us two really different strategies for that 2-week window. The first one is what you might call the East Coast greatest hits.
The efficient checklist approach, yeah.
Exactly. It means you're stacking up the big eastern states really quickly. Brisbane for 3 days, 2 days for the Great Barrier Reef out of Cairns.
A couple of days on the Gold Coast, 2 in Sydney, maybe 3 in Melbourne. It's a lot.
It's a whirlwind tour.
It is, but it's an effective introduction. You're hitting those must-dos.
Mhm.
You're seeing the koalas at Lone Pine. You're getting out on the reef, doing that classic Coogee to Bondi walk.
Exploring Melbourne's laneways. You see the surface of everything, but you are always on the move.
Constantly.
But the second option is a totally different beast. That's the cross-country sprint.
Right. And this one prioritizes two things that are just geographically so isolated. Perth on the west coast and the central outback.
And that's where the logistics get tricky.
Very tricky. You're spending a lot of your precious time on multiple, very long domestic flights. You'd break up the trip with maybe 3 days in Perth.
Which is famous for City Beach, and of course, taking the ferry to Rottnest Island for the quokkas.
For the quokkas, yep. And then you have to dedicate a pretty significant chunk of your trip to the Red Center.
So if you're prioritizing Perth and the Outback, what's the obvious sacrifice? What do you lose?
It's stark. I mean, if you commit to that cross-country route, Perth, Sydney, Uluru, you almost certainly sacrifice Melbourne, and maybe most painfully for many people,
The Great Barrier Reef.
the Great Barrier Reef. You just don't have the flight time left to cover that southern capital and the tropical north.
So connecting this back to that 2-week plan, it really forces one final critical choice that kind of sums up the whole trade-off.
Mm-hmm.
Do you spend your last few days in the food and wine regions of the Barossa Valley, or do you go see the iconic monolith of Uluru?
And this choice really depends on how much time you're willing to spend in transit versus actually experiencing a place.
How so?
Well, the sources say the Barossa Valley is a pretty light lift. You need maybe 2 full days. But Uluru, that demands at least 4 days out of your short 2 weeks.
4 days. That's huge. That's almost a third of the whole trip. I mean, if the goal is just to see the rock, why not just fly in, see it, and fly out?
Because the sheer scale of the Red Center just makes
Yeah.
that impossible. That 4-day commitment, it includes your flight time into Alice Springs or Ayers Rock Airport,
Right.
then the long drive to get to the resorts,
Right.
and then the time you need to actually experience the area. Uluru's a sacred site. It's highly protected. You can't just walk up to it. You need time for the cultural walks, the sunrise and sunset viewings, and importantly, the day trip out to Kings Canyon.
So it's not just about a photo op with the monolith. It's about dedicating yourself to the entire ecosystem and the indigenous cultural experience of that place.
Precisely. If you try to rush Uluru, you end up spending more time in airports and cars than you do appreciating the silence and the scale of the desert.
And crucially, you have to check the calendar. You said Uluru is best visited during the cooler, dry months.
May to September, yes. Which brings us perfectly into the next bit. The crucial logistics and seasonal warnings that can make or break your trip.
Okay, so we know flying covers the big distances between states, but the sources are clear. You still need to get around once you're there.
Absolutely. Renting a car is pretty much mandatory for those regional trips, like getting around the Barossa Valley, driving the Great Ocean Road, or navigating the Uluru and Kings Canyon area.
And this is where those 2-week constraints create some really tough compromises. We saw one family, even on the longer trip, chose to skip the Great Ocean Road entirely.
Yeah, and that's a big deal. The Great Ocean Road with the 12 Apostles and Lockhart Gorge. It's arguably the most famous scenic drive in the world.
So why skip it? Was it really expendable?
Well, it's a great insight into travel psychology. The family realized that a full day stuck in a car, no matter how iconic, would just lead to misery for the kids.
Right.
They'd be sacrificing the whole family's enjoyment just to check a box. So what they gained by skipping it was energy and time, which they used elsewhere. It shows that sometimes, even on a long trip, you just can't see everything.
That's a practical reality check we often forget when we're planning. But maybe the most critical factor isn't cars or planes at all, it's the climate.
100%. The northern climate, we're talking cairns, the Whitsundays, the Daintree Rainforest, is strictly best in the dry season. That's May to October.
And what happens if you ignore that advice and go in the off-season?
If you visit during the wet season, November to April, you are dealing with just scorching heat, intense humidity, heavy rain, and the risk of huge storms, even cyclones.
So it's not just unpleasant, it could ruin your plans.
It could shut them down completely, tours get canceled, roads close, and the water visibility for your Great Barrier Reef trip can be severely impacted.
So for a trip between November and April, you should probably just focus on the south.
Not always, because if you look at the southern climate, the Great Ocean Road, for example, is described as bitterly cold in winter. That's June, July, August. So if you're traveling mid-year and you want that tropical warmth, North Queensland is your only option.
Okay, so knowing those seasonal differences is really the key, no matter how long your trip is.
It's the foundation of the whole plan.
And once you escape that tyranny of the 2-week flight schedule, the options just explode. The sources on the 4-week trip, they showed a critical shift.
A total shift.
They stopped focusing on just logistics and started focusing on depth, on unique experiences.
That's it. They weren't just checking off icons anymore. They were looking for immersion. Let's start with Sydney. They went way beyond the standard photo ops.
Yeah, they made a point of actually catching a performance at the Sydney Opera House, not just looking at it from the outside.
Right, experiencing the venue. And instead of just seeing the Harbor Bridge, they walked across it, got those incredible views, and found this little place called the Secret Garden in Lavender Bay.
A quiet local spot?
Exactly. The extra time bought them quiet moments and local details. They could seek out these unique gems instead of just following the big tourist crowds.
And that seemed to apply up in North Queensland, too. They skipped the main tourist hub in Cairns City.
They did. They stayed at the View Apartments on Trinity Beach, which is a more peaceful, secluded spot about 20 minutes north. They chose tranquility over convenience.
And that focus on the quality of the experience, it seems it extended to their Great Barrier Reef trip as well.
For sure. Instead of a quick little boat tour, they went with a company called Sunlover Reef Cruises out to a big pontoon on Moore Reef.
A pontoon?
Yeah, a huge, stable platform. It had underwater viewing areas, a touch tank for the kids, and even a water slide that goes right into the ocean.
Okay, so that sounds like a much more comprehensive, maybe slightly more commercial, but also a more comfortable way to see the reef.
Exactly. The extra time let them choose the option with better infrastructure. And in the Daintree Rainforest, they took the Bruce Belcher crocodile tour and noted that the expert guides spotted crocs that a self-guided tourist would have just walked right past.
They brought local expertise with their extra time.
They did.
You know, I loved the story about Magnetic Island near Townsville. That's a place most 2-week travelers would never even look at on a map.
That's the beauty of the 4-week schedule, isn't it? They made it a destination. They rented a pink convertible from a place called Tropical Topless.
I mean, you can't make that up.
That's a memory right there. And they spent their time hiking the forts. And that led them to spotting wild koalas and rock wallabies. It's just unhurried, genuine wildlife viewing.
Shifting down to South Queensland, their approach to wildlife also showed that deeper commitment. The source suggested that if you only visit one zoo, you have to make it the Steve Irwin Australia Zoo. Why that one specifically?
It ties into this theme of, purposeful tourism. The sources highlighted that all the profits from the Australia Zoo go directly to animal conservation. Plus, they were able to time their visit to see the Irwin family feeding crocodiles, which just turns a normal zoo visit into a really high-value experience.
And even in a big city like Brisbane, that extra time just meant simple, affordable fun. They spent a whole day just using the city's free stuff.
The South Bank area is a perfect example. It says a riverside oasis with all these free public pools and splash pads and artificial beaches. You don't have to spend a ton of money if you have the hours to just discover things.
which is a sharp contrast to the frantic, paid-for activities that define that shorter 2-week schedule.
Completely.
The final theme that really came out of that 4-week trip was prioritizing food experiences, not just listing cafes, but finding places where the experience was the meal.
Yeah, we're talking about places where the environment is the attraction, not just the food. The classic example was the Pancake Manor in Brisbane. It's famous not just for pancakes, but because you're eating inside this stunning converted old church. It becomes a destination in itself, something a rush traveler would just completely overlook.
So, when you boil it all down, what does this mean for someone planning their own trip? It seems the main takeaway is that Australia's epic scale demands you make a choice.
A foundational choice.
Do you fly fast and sacrifice the quiet depth of places like Magnetic Island to see the maximum number of greatest hits? Or do you rent a car, commit to a smaller region for a deeper dive, and just accept that you're going to miss entire states?
And both are fantastic trips. They're just fundamentally different experiences based on what you value more, time or depth.
But that choice is completely useless if you ignore the climate.
It's instantly undone. You have to know the seasonal differences between the North and the South. You absolutely need to hit those natural wonders, especially the tropical ones like the Reef and the Whitsundays, at their best time. That's the May to October dry season.
It's such a fascinating tension. We've seen the sheer size and the ancient quality of this land, from the oldest tropical rainforest in the world in the Daintree to the sacred isolation of Uluru. But then you contrast that wildness with this huge modern tourism infrastructure, these sophisticated reef pontoons with water slides, the massive air travel hubs, the world-class city beaches.
Yeah.
How does Australia manage to maintain its ancient wild character while simultaneously developing this modern world-class tourism that brings millions of people right up close to that fragile environment? That's something for you to mull over as you start mapping out your own Australian itinerary.